So now we have a very interesting session, very close to my heart. Women in shipping, not because they are women, but because they are women in shipping. And we are very honored to have three personalities. Firstly, we have the Minister, Deputy Minister of Shipping of the Republic of Cyprus, who has graciously accepted to be part of the panel. She has to leave, so if we're running a bit late, she will have to be excused, and the other two panelists will have to carry on. We are honored as well, and I thank very, very much Despina, WISTA International, for coming out purposely for this occasion, both for yesterday's event, the one the Minister mentioned, where the new women captains were recognized officially by the Minister of Malta, and this was done in the presence of WISTA International. So for that, I thank you coming all the way out. And Angie, who needs no introduction either, Angie Hartmann from WISTA Greece, who again made this effort to come in yesterday and leave today. So really, thank you very, very much, most sincerely. I now ask you, Despina, to take the floor and give us a good panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session where, together with our panel, we're going to discuss a topical issue, women in shipping. In recent years, we have come to realize the growing effect our surroundings have on our industry and our businesses on many levels, and that is on the environment, regulatory, society, and so on. And one element that has become very important is diversity and how it affects the future of the shipping industry. WISTA, the Women's International Shipping and Trading Association, which I am honored to be chairing, started somewhat informally 44 years ago. It took 20 years for the first non-European national branch to start. Following that, new national associations in all continents were launched. And in 2018, last July, we gained consultative status at the International Maritime Organization, the latest step in the evolution of an association that has spent 4 decades progressing, and for sure, whose time has come. Our presence has spread, and today, WISTA has 45 national associations and over 3,000 individual members. We work closely with other industry associations to raise their awareness about the benefits of diversity and equality. Following on from our recognition by the IMO, we are working closely with the organization to ensure that its efforts to recognize equality in the shipping industry are heard, acted on, and that the changes the IMO expects to happen do happen. The significance of the inclusion of women in an industry where there's a shortage of seafarers is depicted in IMO's choice for the World Maritime Day theme in 2019, which is empowering women in the maritime community. And of course, we have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, namely goal number 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Now, these goals are not industry-specific, but the clear expectation is that they should be pervasive and acted on across all areas of society and industry. Shipping and trade industries are expected to play their part. The goals cover a range of issues, but there's a specific text in the wording of the Goal 5 objectives that I want to recite. Providing women and girls with equal access to education, healthcare, decent work, and representation in political and economic decision-making processes will fuel sustainable economies and benefit societies and humanity at large. What this means, ladies and gentlemen, is fairly obvious. Women play an important role in creating economic value in any economy, whether that is developing or developed. And it is no wonder that a recent study showed that an organization with 30% female leaders could add up to 6 percentage points to its net margin. Since the launch of WISTA so many years ago, the agenda has moved on and deepened and being taken more seriously. The push for equality and respect spans more than just gender-related issues. In an age of digital and engineering competence, in a new world, There are competitive advantages for being inclusive. The need to raise skills is across the board, and the best minds are in both men and women, and they are needed. But can we, as an industry, attract them? But I would say that there is change. This gives us hope, but there's more that should be done. Empowerment and gender equality are a serious part of our social agenda, but it is not a case of putting in a rule and leaving it there. We have seen significant improvements in recent months, but there's a long way to go. Institutional inequality, the kind that some people do not even realize they may have, has to be talked about more, but done so in a way that encourages change. So what we would like to do in this panel is look at how we can strengthen the role of women in the maritime sector, helping make a difference and make shipping better. So I'm very pleased to introduce our panel, the Honorable Natasa Pilides, Deputy Minister of Shipping, Republic of Cyprus, and Ms. Angie Hartmann, WISTA Hellas President, and also a crew manager at Starbulk SA. Ladies, firstly, I would like to give a few minutes to each one of you to give your thoughts a little more generally on the subject before we go to our questions. So, Minister, if you would like to start.
Thank you, Despina. First of all, congratulations to WISTA for achieving consultative status at the IMO. I think that's a really key and important development. It's something that we as Cyprus supported wholeheartedly, and we're so pleased that you made it. I think it's a milestone for women in shipping, and I'm sure you will make the best out of it.
And thank you for your support, Minister.
As you have done to date, actually.
Thank you.
I think you're right. There is change. We are talking about things more. Maritime Day 2019 is going to be dedicated to women empowerment. Through the Women in Maritime program, I think the IMO has done a lot. And we see now that the global training institutes are producing a lot of women leaders who are emerging in various fields. Recently, EMSA has elected a female director as well, which is also very, very positive. And we're generally seeing a slow increase, not just in the seafarers and the women in the private sector, but also in the women in the public sector who represent shipping. However, yes, there is a lot more to be done, and we're still way, way behind. I think the key issue is that a lot of employers are basically ignoring or not making the most of what is pretty much 50% of the available talent pool. So that's something that we need to address, not just because we want to help women. Far from it. We want to help the shipping industry, and I think that's what the focus should be. And that is why I think that the discussion is as relevant to men as it is to women, and it needs to be inclusive of men as well as women, because as a maritime community, we need to come together and find the solutions which will make better use of the talent pool available, whether it be men or women, whether it be any person from any background who has something to offer, because the question is, how competent is a person? Not, you know, are they a woman or are they a man? And ultimately, we should get to the point where, as you said yesterday, decisions are gender blind. The gender is not relevant. What is relevant is the knowledge, the skills, the willingness to contribute. And giving, of course, both women and men the tools that will enable them to contribute. And that's something that we do need to look at very carefully. Do we all have equal opportunity is one aspect. And for me, the answer is definitely no. And do we all have the tools that enable us to get to where we can get to? And again, there are things to be done in that area as well.
Thank you very much, Minister. And this is an important point to make, that it should be inclusive of everyone. And we will talk a little bit about it later, how can we, all of us as a society, work on this. But Angie, if you would like to say a few words, how you got into the shipping industry, and also maybe a few words on what has changed the last 5 years or how things are improving.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for being here. Lovely country, very nice group. Despina, thank you. I started in 1993. I think my experience shows a significant change as a crew manager in Starbuck. To say the truth, in the beginning, it was very, very difficult. You have to prove yourself. You have to work hard. You have to be very loyal. And when you say something, you have to follow up. It's very difficult to work with the human element. You know, I mean, dealing with people, it's something very difficult. You have to try and get into the seafarers' mentality. I mean, you have to board the ships. You have to see how seafarers are on board, the difficulties, the particularities. As our dear master said yesterday, they get homesick, they're away from their families, the weather, the storms. The whole life, it's a small society, 20 people on board a vessel. So if you don't go on board and travel and see how it is, you can never really understand what they're talking about. So because I was thrown in the deep, I had to swim and survive and prove myself that I could manage. So what I did is I started going on board the vessels. I visited the Philippines and Greece, seafarers and families, see how they felt, what they think, what were the odds, what were the pros, the cons, and try to put myself in their foot. This took a lot of time. This did not happen overnight. It took a lot of time. People have to respect you. You gain their respect. So I was very lucky to have been given this chance. I'm very thankful. It's a fantastic job, career. It's fantastic dealing with these people. It's hard work, okay, and you have to really love what you're doing. One thing that I feel that is very important is that you need to follow up always. Things are changing. I can see since 1993, I'm 27 years now in this job, things have changed. Things are changing. We have to be, we cannot see the glass half empty. We need to see it half full. This is my way of thinking. So if you ask really me, there were no crew managers, if I recall, okay, I cannot know 100%, but from what I know, in 1993, there weren't many crew managers, women. Today, there are colleagues. We have a lot of members in WISTA that they are crew managers, and believe me, that's a big benefit because we do exchange ideas, we help each other. So I think things are changing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angie. Gender equality, besides being fair, it is also good for business. Any comments on that? To further expand on your thoughts before?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear that gender equality is good for business. I think it's you know, there are talented people amongst women as there are talented people amongst men. Perhaps I'll give an example that is very that comes out of my personal experience. I used to work for a very, very large firm which had about 1,000 employees and in Cyprus, and more than 50% of them were women, more than 50%. And this was true at all levels, right up to the level of senior manager, which was just before the level of partner. And in all different levels, 50-50 women in terms of the attribution of the percentage, but also women were generally slightly outperforming the men in their appraisals if you looked at them across the board. And this was true at senior manager level, which clearly is what prepares you to then become a partner. But then you got to the partner level, and there were, at the time, and this is a long time ago, but there were 2 women, I think, partners, and about 50, 60 men. So clearly, there was something that went wrong in that leap from senior manager to partner, which had nothing to do with the appraisal of the person. Because if you are writing down their report and you're saying, yes, they are excellent at this, excellent at that, then there's something other than the performance that stops you from getting promoted. I recently, last week actually, had a conversation with the managing partner of one similar firm. And he said to me, oh yes, that is true, but it's because women don't really want it. They don't really want to become, you know, top management because they don't have the time to dedicate, and they want to sort of dedicate time to their families. And that's an excuse I've heard so many times. And I think I know enough women that I've worked with in the past or that I work with now to know that that is not true. Of course, some women want that, and it's absolutely okay that they can make that choice. But I think it would be a very, very big generalization to say that it's true of everyone. So for me, it goes without saying that the results that women can produce are at least as good as the results that men can produce. As I've said before, there are good enough women, there are women who are good enough, there are men who are good enough, and there are people who are perhaps not up to, and they are of both genders. So I think prejudice is the first and foremost thing that needs to be overcome, more than any tools, more than any sort of support systems and flexi time and this and that. Those things do help a lot. But the first thing that needs to change is people's attitude. And I can tell you that even being in this job for 6 months, but also in many previous roles, I can quote examples of things that happen which sort of indicate an underlying prejudice at least every single day, if not more. And sometimes you think it's funny, or you don't really pay attention to it. And it's not that I want to make a big deal out of, small incidents, but the underlying attitude is what matters. It's that they come from a place of prejudice. And that's why, as I said, the dialogue needs to be collaborative, because people need to understand both sides and where the concerns are coming from. I think there's enough studies that prove the good performance of women, that we don't need to be talking about that anymore. We need to be talking about how to get them to contribute more.
Thank you, Minister. And actually, you're leading me into a next question. But before that, Angie, what is your take on this?
Okay, I would say the reality of a global gender imbalance in the workforce is undoubtedly and not an issue only in the shipping sector. Christine Lagarde said in an interview last year, I'm sorry I'm reading, but I'm afraid I might forget some data which I would like to let you share with you, that spending money on research and education and increasing the number of women in the workforce are smart strategies. She has given examples like Japan, where estimate shows that if women participated in the workforce at a similar rate as men, GDP would rise by 9%. And India, where GDP could increase by nearly 27%.
That are big numbers.
That are big numbers, yeah. She stated that, to put it simply, bringing women into the into the workforce is an economic no-brainer. The International Chamber of Shipping and Manpower report, which was issued in 2015, estimated a shortage of 1,407,000 qualified and competent seafarers by 2025. The increasing shortage of maritime talent in both operational and leadership roles threatens the sustainability of the sector. While women comprise 50% of global talent, the International Transport Workers Federation estimates that they form only 2% of the 1.25 million seafarers worldwide. Although the total number is slowly increasing, as is a women's representation in the ranks of the ship's officers and masters, their numbers have not paralleled the increasing proportion of women in other formerly male-dominated fields. There is a need for the shipping community to bridge the gender gap. Most women seafarers are employed in non-technical positions on passenger ships, while women shipmasters, chief engineers, and other officers are few. If women seafarers were utilized, could fill labor shortages in the industry, both in the seagoing positions and in the maritime positions, ashore that require seagoing experience. The current increase of women presence in the maritime industry has prompted that a number of organizations to implement policies concerning the encouragement and consolidation of female presence in that environment. In particular, IMO is making a concerned effort to help us, industry, move on from that tradition and to help women achieve a representation within that is more in keeping with 21st century expectations. IMO's program on the integration of women in the maritime sector has a primary objective to encourage IMO member states to open the doors of their maritime institutes to enable women to train alongside men and so acquire the high level of competence that the maritime industry demands.
The research is there, clearly. The numbers are there. So we all are aware of these things, but how do we go about it? Do we need more legislation on equality, or will social pressures be enough? Are gender quotas good for business, or are they totally missing the point? That's my question. Minister?
I think both are needed. I think we need to create awareness, particularly within the seafarers profession. We are seeing in Cyprus, even though we're a very small place, that awareness campaigns are paying off. We've got a few programs now that you're very well aware of, apart from adoptership and visiting schools very regularly at sort of very early young age levels, but elementary school, but also later on for teenagers. I can't tell you how many questions I get sort of personally from girls who are interested in these careers, and we are seeing the numbers increase. We have now 30% female intake in the new intake of the University of Nicosia Maritime Academy for seafarers, which is absolutely thrilling. It's much better than the 2%, and I know it's not an overall percentage, but we can hope that we will have that increase in numbers sort of across the board. When it comes to regulatory change, do you know, I hear so much about against quotas and women saying, oh, we shouldn't have quotas because we are good enough. And nobody's questioning, well, at least I'm not questioning that we're good enough. But going back to the example that I gave before, if you have 50-50 women at you know, prior to top level, and then they suddenly drop to 1%, there's clearly a problem. And the problem is not that the women are not good enough. So if the world is being unfair on women up until now, then why is it so wrong to have legislative change that doesn't even ensure that things are fair? It just ensures that there's slightly less unfairness in the consideration of women for possible positions. So for me, and the dreaded matter of quotas is, you know, that everyone hates to talk about. I think when it's done well and when it's well designed and it just makes people consider certain candidates that they wouldn't have considered, then it's absolutely, completely fair. Now, when it comes to, you know, applying it to seafarers, applying it to ships, it's a different question because you need to look at the availability of talent that you would then need to employ. So there needs to be some sort of formula where it doesn't make it difficult for the shipping companies to actually implement these measures. So I think, you know, yes, measures can be taken. They need to be tailored to different situations, and they need to reflect how much availability there is, as well as you know, what a reasonable percentage would be initially and what we can build up to. So you can't go from 1% to 50%. You have to take it slowly. And the education needs to be there as an element that ensures that the necessary talent pool goes in. And that's not just in terms of the seafarer professions, it's also in terms of women studying, not choosing science topics for their university, not choosing engineering topics for their university degrees, which also needs to increase so that we have that available talent pool to go into the maritime industry. And of course, the same applies to any other industry where, you know, they need to look at whatever skill set people need to have to be available as an option for employers.
Thank you, Minister. I suppose the main criticism of quotas is the fact that you don't want to hire token women just to fill the places. You want to hire the best woman or the best person for the job. And I think what we should look into is what you said previously, that we should make sure that they are carefully thought of. But there's still quite a lot of criticism. I myself am not sure yet if quotas are needed, but I do understand your point, and I believe if these were put in place in the right way, then it could possibly work. Angie,
Just to make an addition, I think the issue of quotas is very difficult to implement in a private setting because private companies make decisions on their own concerns, whether those concerns are right or wrong. You know, so you can't necessarily make a private company take those decisions, but I definitely think that in public positions and public posts and in certainly in politics and decision and policy making sort of areas, there is a need for more women because they need to drive the change that will enable women to enter the job market more effectively. And I also think that there's a big difference between developed and developing countries, which you highlighted also in your in the statistics, and that also needs to be reflected. You know, you need to take steps according to how mature, but society is never going to be mature enough to implement certain changes, and you just, in certain cases, need to take decisive action to ensure that things change.
To implement the change. Angie?
I also agree that I don't think quotas are necessary as long as decisions are made based on merit and skills. The issue is that we need to change our mindsets and cultivate our environment and open mindedness within our organizations. The quotas will truly be unnecessary.
Thank you. To create equality, there needs to be more than women. If we can have 5 more minutes, Minister, is that okay? Or?
2?
2. Okay. So let this then be the last question. Okay. Thank you very much. So to create equality, there needs to be more than women at the table. We need to include men. So any comment on this? This is a society issue.
Fully agree. I think, you know, for centuries, men have been the ones making decisions. And clearly, society in a lot of ways emanates from that. So if we want that to change, men have to be included in the discussions because they are the ones who need to change mindset, as you said, and accept and understand the business need for change more than, you know, whatever other aspect we as women feel is also important. So yes, of course, it has to be collaborative, and men need to, you know, as with any measures introduced, everyone needs to buy into them. Everyone needs to understand the benefits and how it will help them.
Before I move on to Angie for her thoughts on this, I have to say, as WISTA International, we have been very pleasantly surprised, especially the last year, of how many industry associations, not women-related associations, industry associations are approaching us because this is a big issue for them. So they believe this is the future, and they want to cooperate on looking at the future in a more constructive way. So this is, for us, a big indication of actual change.
Also, sorry to, just one more point, as WISTA, I think one amazing thing that you do is that you accept male members, and that is just exactly indicative of how inclusive it should be. You know, organizations like WISTA are not meant to be closed off, you know, secret groups of women conspiring together. They need to be open to the contribution from men, which is crucial, a crucial element for success.
On that point, what I say as president of WISTA, if you preach inclusion, then you need to act on it as well. So I think that's very right. Angie?
Equality is not a matter of one gender only, okay? And it's not definitely not discussion that only half of the population can have. Because then we will never truly be successful in implementing changes. Equality is... Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Equality is a discussion for all society, men and women. All must be included. This is not a battle between men and women. It's a battle for more success, future of our industry. One, we're aligned with the other. That's how we see it. This is the right talent, but if you have the right talent, your job and talent, you're there.
And we have about 10 minutes, and my last question is on role models. We unfortunately did not have many female role models until quite recently in the industry, and that was a big issue because young girls entering the industry didn't have anything to aspire to. They sometimes didn't even enter the industry because they saw it as unapproachable, possibly. But now clearly we do have role models. We've had the minister here. We have you as a role model in the in the Greek shipping industry. So how can we empower women around the industry to become more engaged?
Okay, the truth is the example, right? I mean, mentoring. I mean, what we do in WISTA, for example, right? We have a lot of people that approach us, ladies that approach us, and they're interested to see what we're doing. What is all this thing about? We have Greek ladies, masters in tankers in Greece, chief engineer.
And we awarded the ladies yesterday.
Yes, exactly, the ladies yesterday.
Yes.
I mean, these are role models, right? We all get, a lot of people from universities that they come to us and they ask us what are the pros, what are the cons, working in the shipping company or working on board a vessel. So it's not only, what you do in the university, right? It's also practical. So it's very important to look up to this. Okay, if you don't love the sea and if you don't like the human, if you're not very good with the human factor, I'm not sure if you can really hang on in there, but
because shipping is really a lot about people's
definitely.
industry.
If you're not, it takes a lot out of you. Okay, being with people and sharing experiences with people and try to get into their shoes. It's difficult. Okay, it's very difficult to, for example, if you want to keep somebody on board because you don't have a replacement, for example. And you have to talk to him and persuade him to stay on board, because you need to find somebody else, because these things happen, okay? We have to be realistic. If you don't have a very good feedback with this person, if you don't really get to know this person, you can't really ask and demand a lot of things out of them. So it all has to do with very good chemistry and very good relation. Dealing with people, it's a very, very difficult and delicate factor. So you have to be there constantly, you have to be updated, you have to hear, you have to listen, you have to be very alert. Things are changing, and you have to be there in order to be able to support. For example, a karaoke. I'm just giving you a very simple example. Karaoke could save my life. What do I mean by that? You might have somebody who wants to sign off the vessel, right? And you say to him, I will do whatever you need, I will do whatever you can, I will send you a karaoke on board, please help me, stay on board, and because I don't have somebody to send right now. You see that the people will listen, they will give in. It's just a matter of good relation. We need to invest on that also.
It's about
It's not only money, okay? Definitely it's not only money.
Thank you very much, Angie. So what we have heard here today is that equality does make good business sense, and it positively impacts organizations. It provides increased productivity, innovation, and efficiency. It gives us the ability to attract talent, but also, and perhaps more importantly, to retain this talent. And while gender quotas may serve a purpose, they should not be our end goal, and this is also a personal opinion, rather. Our end goal should be a shift in the culture and the mindset to acknowledge that gender diversity has a positive economic value to companies, but also to industries and to the economy as a whole. Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you, Angie, and thank you, of course, to the minister that had to leave a little bit earlier.
And I hope this was some enlightening to our lady seafarers. Yes. It was great seeing them yesterday. You can see how things are really changing, and we're very happy to see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.